Heyo everyone! Hexi here. I know it's kind of hard to believe, but Mama Hexi's getting kinda old, and I was just thinking back on some of my first gaming experiences and decided to have a little story time and tell you about them. Now, my first ever console was an old hand-me-down Atari, and the first game I ever got to play on it was simply called Adventure. This was back before adventure games were a whole genre, so they were able to get away with doing shit like that. The game is about collecting various artifacts so that you can slay dragons and break into a castle to get the Holy Grail. The games back then were very simple, but they required some imagination in order to play them, as the instructions weren't particularly helpful, simply telling you to find things at the best of times. Still, trying to figure out what the programmer was thinking was part of the fun of these simple-to-pick-up games. My family would later go on to get a Sega Genesis, and we had this 6-game-in-1 cart that had Sonic 1, Golden Axe, Shinobi, among some other games. Those are the ones that stood out the most to me, though. They were highly arcadey and addictive even, which could certainly explain some of my enjoyment of those quick reaction, fast-paced games later on in life. I can't even begin to describe how frustrating it was for me and my brother as kids to struggle through Golden Axe in co-op, working together, back in the day where you could just sit on the couch side by side and punch each other whenever someone messed up. Failing over and over, just trying to slowly inch our way further through the game with each playthrough, just to have some adult neighbor from next door come over and beat the game in one sitting because they understood the mechanics much better than our young minds could ever comprehend. These games were a lot more streamlined though. It doesn't take a genius to figure out Sonic 1. You run to the right until you come to an impassable wall, like in Marble Zone. Then you run to the left until you come to the lava pits. Fuck the lava pits. My cousins were the ones who wound up with the Nintendo Entertainment System, so I had to go over to their house to play the Marios and the Mega Mans. But those always felt a bit slower to me when compared to the Genesis's blast processing. It would be a while before I would get another console. I'd eventually pick up a refurbished PSX, the slim one, for $40 at the time, which wasn't exactly a small cost back then. But I saved up my allowance and finally had a game system that was all my own. My collection of PlayStation games grew and grew as I enjoyed the fuck out of that little system, to the point that eventually the little spindle that held the discs in place, it snapped completely in half, and I had to get a whole new PlayStation. Thankfully, a friend donated an old fat model, and it's still holding up to this day. At any rate, I wound up with nearly 2 whole shelves of PS1 games, and I wanted to keep those games around for later, so it's little wonder that I wound up copying them to hard drives to preserve them forever. I played a lot of RPGs during this time. I've got both the Chrono games, the whole Final Fantasy series on PSX, Ark the Lad, Wild Arms, Xenogears. The list is massive, which is probably part of what boosted the PS2's monster library, were just sequels to PS1 games. But back then, games would proudly put on the back of their box how many books worth of dialogue they'd written, or how many minutes of fully animated cutscenes they could cram onto their disc. They were massive wastes of time, but they felt important because the writers and animators were proud of the work they were contributing to. The plots had drama, intrigue, violence, romance, tragedy, comedy. It was such a great time to be a gamer. At any rate, guys, I feel like that's about all I can talk about for this one video. So I'll tell you about the GameCube and PS2 era of my life next time. Until then, ciao for now, and Hexi out. Thanks go out to my Patreon supporters. Your donations mean the world to me, and I thank you for supporting my future endeavors.